And thank you to the Honorable Amanda Dorn to bring this motion to the House and all the wonderful contributions that we've heard. It's a wonderful debate, and I think we should be discussing topics like this more often in this chamber. I rise here today as a person who's actually, as Honorable Julie Freeman mentioned, that complicated process in the lab. That has been my life, and I have done that for over a decade in the life, producing different forms and products using the synthetic biology approach that we have been learning about in this chamber. And as anything, this also has another side to the coin that we must educate ourselves and we look into. Thank you to the Honorable Agriculture Minister to bring to our attention that that report, I also been through that report, Alternative Proteins and Plant-Based Proteins. It's a really, really good piece of work that was done. However, again, we've seen that things and information and knowledge is used a lot of times to build a political narrative, which is probably we shouldn't be doing like this. So coming back to the cellular agriculture in Western Australia. Honorable Amanda Dorn brought to our attention that it takes 92% more water to produce beef or similar meats as compared, and the cellular agriculture can reduce them. So let me bring it to your attention that it's actually, there's a lot of papers published in the scientific domain in the top journals, which approximately 70 to 80% less water, but they are based on a lot of assumptions that requires recycling the media that we prepare on a daily basis, which normally does not happen in the industrial setting where you want to scale products up to a certain level. It also depends upon the recycling and the different plant designs that people uses compared to Boston or the industry that we have just starting in Australia. I will not talk about Western Australia yet in that space. But the biggest problem, as you mentioned, is not the water, it's the energy. So it's approximately 75 to 95 kilowatt hours you require to produce 1 kilogram of a cellular meat. And that's huge if you put it into the numbers in context at this moment. It's an energy guzzler, if you ask me. And at the same time, the cost of the bioreactors. So I have been a founder of a synthetic biology startup, and I can tell you the bioreactors not just cost lots of money to set up a very basic lab-level pilot study, let alone the scale that we are talking about to match the industry that we have in Western Australia. They not just cost a lot, but they also, the sterile environments they require in a very small pilot lab just for a proof of concept, it's just financially not viable at this moment of time. Scale and supply is another big issue that we've got at this moment, Acting President, because most of this industry is at a pilot space right now. And the very basic consumables that we use in the labs also involves cell lines, which include biopsies, but then also when you take that cell line, when it's been successful, when you take that cell line further to produce at a pilot space, I'm not even talking about the industrial scale yet, it requires the chemicals and the serums, which are also produced by the animals. We haven't yet found a synthetic way to produce those serums. And they cost a lot. The cost is absolutely one of the biggest barriers in terms of, and again and again, we're going back to the same animal that we're trying to protect here or look after the welfare. However, the most significant risk that I see in this space is the corporate consolidation. These work because they are the very first, normally people who invest into this industry patent that work. And that's where the biggest risk to the equity in the food industry come from. And that's where the biggest danger to our farmers and our families and smallholder industries comes into. Because when those big giants will patent the way to do it, and when they look to scale it up, you're looking at a whole consolidation happening and the big giants or the big pharma coming and taking over our farming industry at the same time. So there is a huge risk to the equity and access to the food. The Honorable Amanda Dorn also brought to our attention feeding the growing population. And since I started studying agriculture, which was about 20 years back in India, this was the biggest question that was being asked and brainstormed in every lecture I would go to, that how are we going to feed the 9 billion people in 2050? But good news is that is a question of the last decade. We have made immense progress in the genetic gains into the agriculture industry. And honestly, Western Australia is leading that space. Western Australian farmers have not just delivered, but demonstrated to the rest of the world that how agriculture can be done differently with what natural resources and environments we've got in this country. There's a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of scientists who travel from all over the world to learn these practices, how our farmers are doing it with the resources, the scarcity of the water and the nutrients in the soil. Western Australian soils have got next to zero phosphorus, which is one of the most important micronutrients for the plants to grow. Yet, nature found its way. And we are one of the 36 global biodiversity hotspots. So that fascinates me, that how on earth that we are able to be the global biodiversity hotspot, yet we have next to nothing nutrients. So that gives me a promise to the future that we have more than plenty to feed the people, 9 or 10 billion maybe after COVID now. We've had a lot of increase in that space. We had a lot of COVID babies that we might have 10 billion to feed, but that is not a question discussed in any of the agricultural settings among the scientists these days, because we have solved that problem, and there is a lot of incredible work that has been done by the farming community of Western Australia. Again, nothing is a silver bullet. Everything has to happen in moderation, and there is nothing wrong with doing the proof of concepts and pilot studies and be innovative, and we have been doing that. There is a lot of, as I said, I've had my own startup producing synthetic biology products that are very scarcely available in the leg of, and like when Western Australia again has been one of the leader in producing the pastures, the key pasture species for the livestock industry. However, I identified that when we want to produce pastures which reduces the methane emissions into the environments when our livestock feeds on it, the genetic networks are connected. When you want a gain from a genetic perspective, there is always a trade-off. And the trade-off I found was that if I increase the production of those nutrients in the legumes by genetic setting, then I will also make them much more methane inefficient. So that's why the choice of taking that process into the lab and not putting that poison into the paddock for our livestock. So that's where the science and the innovation needs to go. And that's where the government needs to support the next generation of technologies and the next generation of solutions. So with all of that in view, and I have done it myself, I do not commend this motion to the House. Thank you very much.